Datocracy, to empower so we have the title is Datocracy to Empower the Marginalized Communities with Ronda Železny Green, who is the co-founder and director of Datocracy and Panoply Digital. And so this is the video.
Además, es asesora en el Consejo Alianza del Impacto Digital IAL en la Fundación de las Naciones Unidas. Durante los últimos 20 años, Ronda ha sido impulsora del cambio digital, creando sistemas de aprendizaje social para empoderar a poblaciones consideradas históricamente marginadas. Ha diseñado y dirigido numerosos proyectos en el ámbito de la tecnología, en el sudeste asiático, África y Medio Oriente, en los que ha fomentado el desarrollo educativo y socioeconómico de mujeres y niñas. Además, Ronda es coproductora de Gender and Mobiles, un boletín que durante más de una década ha investigado cómo las mujeres y las niñas dan forma a las tecnologías móviles a través del uso de los dispositivos.
Bueno, estupenda presentación. Os decía que no.
So what a nice video. So I was telling you that we have to remember that many of these videos and the talks, well, not the videos, but the presentations and the speeches and the talks delivered by many of these experts have been published in this book. So now we will get to know the work done by Ronda Železny. We've been talking for a few days. We're talking about the decoding of the digital colonialism. How can we use Datocracy and Panoply Digital? What are these platforms? Thank you for the question. I understand Spanish, but I prefer to switch to English. It's easier for me.
I just want to start by saying that, as you saw from the video, I've been working for 20 years in this area, but I have lived my entire life as a Black woman with a disability. And one of the things that has been most striking so far during this conference when we're talking about empowerment is that many of the things we have discussed have not examined some of these challenges from a very intersectional manner. And in fact, as only the second Black person, or maybe the first who identifies as Black, I don't know if my colleague who went first on Monday identifies as colored, but for me, being the first Black woman on this stage and speaking from the position of also having a disability, I know that the conversations here have felt somewhat superficial, somewhat scratching the surface of the depth of the challenge that is before us. And if we are talking about the use of technology for democracy, we certainly can't forget places like my colleague Helican mentioned Palestine. We can't forget places like the Congo, where most of our minerals for our technologies are coming from there. We can't forget, you know, women who are making these phones in Foxconn factories for low wages. So the work that I do with both Panoply Digital and Datocracy is actually examining these problems in a depth and from an intersectional perspective. And that intersectional perspective lets me know that we have so much more work to do in terms of how we democratize the digital. Because to say democracy, that means everyone, all the people. It means that we're all participating. And so this is why I'm created Datocracy, because this organization is going to be the intersection where data upskilling and democracy meet. It will be work that is for the global majority and by the global majority. And when I say global majority, I mean those people in the world that are the majority basis on race or religion or even gender. So this is the work that I'm doing.
Wow, un gran trabajo por delante. Me decías, ¿no?
That is a great job.
El comienzo.
So you were saying that since from the beginning of your work, when you started working on this project, something really fundamental was empathy. How can you combine technology with the use of empathy to empower all these communities?
And a director, or maybe even the chief learning officer, and I often like to think of myself as an interpreter. And what do I mean by that? So when I first started my working life as an adult, I was a teacher. I taught English as a second language and English as a foreign language. And for me, that experience of helping other people to understand my language made me realize I didn't understand my language, because to know English and to know how to speak it is one thing, but to teach it is a much more difficult thing to do. And that was the beginning of my journey for empathy through capacity building, training, upskilling. As I perfected my craft as an educator, I took a course during my first master's program in technology and education, and it changed my life, because at that time, I had taught in Africa, Asia, and the United States, and I knew that education was not working in any of these places. It was in South Korea, the place in Asia, but even there it was not working despite having all the tools. So when I took this course, Technology and Education, with an incredible professor, she's also Spanish, named Catherine Kiss, I learned that technology has the power to make education more personal, to make it relevant, to make education more accessible to people. And so it lit a fire for me. And so after doing my first master's, I did a second master's in technology, because I really wanted to understand, if I was going to use technology in education, what did that mean practically? So all of my work that I've done in terms of the employers and the consulting that I've worked with, I am now considering myself an interpreter, because I go into very difficult sectors like mobile telecommunications, like the internet industry, like the data industry, and I study and I learn, how do you make sense of this? What's happening in this sector? And then I use my knowledge to teach other people who are maybe afraid because they don't see people like them working in this sector. They don't see representation, they don't see people doing what they can do, so when they don't see themselves represented, they don't know that this is a possibility for them. So all of my work, whether it's in Africa, Asia, Latin America, or sometimes even in the United States, focuses on helping people gain knowledge in a manner that is more accessible to them by interpreting it in a framework that, to be quite honest, is less patriarchal, because most of our education and our curricula is quite patriarchal, and is also less Western, is also less white, because, to be honest with you, growing up in the United States, how I learned at home, how I talked at home was not how I talk to you here today, but this education was in some ways forced on me. So now I'm doing the work to make education be reimagined in a manner that will be more accessible.
¿Y cómo podemos cuidar de alguna manera?
And how can we take into account all these social biases, racism, sexism, discrimination against other religions? How can we do it in such a manner that artificial intelligence, for example, uses lots of information that we put into them to avoid replicating the biases, so that the future can have more equal opportunities?
Education is the most powerful tool with which we can change the world. And I would say in this case, it really starts with education of government. So one thing I have really enjoyed about the conference is everyone who is talking about their work to help governments with data, technology, so on and so forth. In my work, this has meant a huge difference. So just last year, I was working with the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change on a project in Ghana, where I got this dress, Malawi, and Senegal. And this work involved training government civil servants, even including people in the president's offices, to basically understand how data and how the digital was important to life as a citizen of these countries. And you might ask me, well, okay, Rhonda, technology is everywhere, data is everywhere. Didn't they know this? And it's not a matter of knowing that these tools are powerful, but it's a matter of habit in some cases. People did not want to change their habits in terms of doing things by hand or manually. People did not want to make visible all of their activities that they were doing. And they didn't necessarily always agree that the digital or data efficiency was going to be beneficial to them or their citizens.
Lo bueno es que esto cambia muy rápidamente, ¿no? En cuanto disteis algunas de las formaciones.
The good thing is that these changes take place very fast, as soon as they realize the advantages of combining this work with the work of the government, and how this has a real impact on the citizens very, very fast. Because technology also helps us advocate for our rights, to demand real changes from governments. So how did you, for example, leave this after speeding up this process in Ghana, for example?
We're about 10 months from January to October of 2023. And I was very proud that at the end of it, the Minister of ICT for Ghana actually chose to use their own funding and not Tony Blair's funding to scale that project to all the civil servants in the country. So for me, what this meant and what we saw was a substantial change in terms of building and creating a digital mindset, wanting to use data more purposefully to help the country, creating ideas for apps and other things that would make life easier for people in Ghana. And so I would say that for me was a testament to the work of being an interpreter and getting people to understand why this is relevant and why we need the participation of the government in this area.
En estos espacios que tenemos de networking que...
So in these networking spaces that are so good to find more ideas and to get to know people such as Ronda, people like Ronda. I was impressed to hear that you understand the need to have digital citizens.
Is the fact that we are seeing a lot more bad behavior online, and I think that one of the problems is the technology that we have, let's say, is a very experienced 55-year-old, and we maybe have 3 months old, and we are trying to use this technology in ways that are sophisticated. And the problem that this is causing is that people don't know how to behave. They don't know how to treat each other with empathy, love, respect. Everything is about monetization, clicks, attention, the attention economy. And so one of the things that I've been advocating through my work, particularly as a mother to a young girl, but also through my work with organizations like the UN, is that we need a new social contract, something that is fit for the digital era. We need people to understand how to behave online, how to live the good life without harming other people. And I think that this is not just limited to how we behave online, but even the whole process of getting online. Like I mentioned at the start, these areas of the world that are in constant conflict because of our use of technology. Yeah. How can we even start with making their lives better? And I think that will set off a chain of events that helps everyone ultimately.
Claro. Me encanta, ¿no? Cómo de repente estamos hablando.
So I'm loving this because we're talking about data, technology, artificial intelligence, and at the same time ethics, technology, retrieving all things back, getting all these things back. So we're talking about education, how you started out your career as a teacher. How can we use data for the good to empower the youth, the youngest citizens? You have projects around it yet?
I'm doing with Datocracy. I'm actually creating curricula in areas that are meant to help people acquire skills about how to be citizen activists based on topics that are of interest to them. So, for example, in October of this year, in Spain and also online and globally, we'll be launching courses related to climate literacy and data. So helping people take what's in their environment, like they don't have to study a far-off place, but learning from what's in their immediate environment and using that information, taking that data, and being able to, like my colleague from Chile yesterday talked about, visualize this information in a way that can communicate your needs, communicate the change that you want to see in the world. And so upskilling for me is something where I think people have a lot of fear of working with data. They have a lot of fear working with technology. So one of my roles as an interpreter is to lower that affective filter and make people feel comfortable. Basically saying data is for everyone, technology is for everyone.
Comenzábamos ayer la jornada.
So yesterday we started out talking about how to overcome the fear of data, so that we really can make the change we want to see in the world. We can be the change. We have 5 more minutes for the audience. This was super fast and super short. Any questions? Yes.
Hello, thank you. In Spanish or English? Well, I would like to know more about your work on the rights of people with disabilities regarding education and other issues.
Sure. So I would say with the rights of disabilities, myself, my disability is ADHD. And one of the things that has really crippled me as the attention economy has grown is just like excessive amounts of information, lots of text on pages, things not being, stated very clear. So one of the things that I do in terms of working, for example, I'm working right now with a client that has a digital platform throughout Sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, and parts of Latin America. And one of the things that they have not understood is that their client base is very low literate, so meaning they're disabled from a sense of they can't read and write despite being adults. So one of the things that I'm helping them with is to change their current kind of text-based platform into an interactive voice response system so that people who can't read are better able to access the content. Another thing that I'm doing in this area with this particular client is helping them to reduce information in a way that, makes it easier to digest, while at the same time being immediately useful to the people who need it. Because most of the people in these countries, they're coming for just-in-time learning, meaning they need it for, a use at a particular point in time, and then they move on. So that's a bit of the work that I do right now in disability and technology.
Mm-hmm. Hay otra pregunta, Jan.
La ronda.
More questions.
What are you most excited about in terms of education and in terms of the Global South? What do you think is a game changer coming in the next few years?
That's a good question. I mean, I think my colleague, the woman who spoke first, Pelomuni, I think is her name. For me, that was one of the most exciting things because I had read about her organization before coming here, and I think projects like this that are advancing technology and data in mother tongue languages is fantastic. So one of the projects that I've been studying recently is called Robots Mali. In the country of Mali in Francophone Africa. And basically, the Ministry of Education is working with a startup to produce content, to produce educational materials, all in the local languages. So they're no longer using French as the medium of instruction. And having nations and people be able to reclaim their identity, being able to speak in their own voices, much like what we learned yesterday, it makes such a huge difference. And so I think that change is what I'm most excited about, more people being able to participate in a way that is comfortable for them.
Me hablabas antes también, ¿no?, de la necesidad de usar la tecnología.
You were talking about the need to use technology to put people at the center. In a way, this is what we're trying to highlight here. People who are interested in these trainings that you were telling us about, how can they stay tuned? They can just follow Datocracy, Panoply Digital. You're evil. We have to leave it here. Oh my gosh. Okay, it's a pleasure to be able to chat with Ronda. Thanks so much.